All right, we made it to the end of the week here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's Friday. It's always good to get to Friday. It means you're one day closer to game day, and it also means you're at the end of the week, which we all look forward to. Since it's Friday, you should do me a solid and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit the like button on this video so we can get everything looking great with all the likes and all the subscriptions and certainly all the views. Tell a friend about how you get your Morning Pitt fix, your Morning Pitt news right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com with the Morning Pitt Monday through Friday. We do it every day through the week. Release a video. It might be 15 minutes, 20, 25, 30, whatever it takes to talk about whatever's going on in the world of Pitt sports. And we kind of have a routine for what each day is and what we get to each day and what topics we're going to cover. There's the day where we go over the two deep, the day where we recap what happened in the Coastal. We talk a little offense. We talk a little defense. Certainly on Fridays, we look ahead to the weekend, keys to the game, and other games in the Coastal Division and the ACC that you need to keep an eye on, games that are relevant. And we'll get to that for sure. We'll also talk, of course, what Pitt needs to do against Louisville, what some of the keys are for Pitt against Louisville tomorrow night. Road game. Interestingly enough, and this just sort of dawned on me, I think yesterday, and I'll just kind of mention it as right off the bat that, and maybe this isn't a surprise to you. Maybe you were already thinking about it. This is game 7 for Pitt and only the second road game so far. They've been at Acrisure Stadium, West Virginia, Tennessee, Rhode Island, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. 5 out of the first 6 games have been at home. This schedule backloaded with road games. Only 2 home games in the final half of the season. In the final 6 games, only 2 are going to be at home. And what is that? Duke and Syracuse, I believe, right? And then the rest, they're going to be on the road. They're going to be at Louisville, at North Carolina, at Virginia, and then, of course, the finale at Miami. And so they've got that road winning streak. Going for a little while now. They've been very good away from home. We'll see how they can keep that up because they're going to have some of their biggest tests of the season happening outside of the 4-1-2 and away from Acrisure Stadium. And it starts tomorrow night with a trip to Louisville to take on the Cardinals. And I think we have a lot to talk about with that game and a lot of keys to that game. And then, like I said, we're going to look around the ACC as well and see what else is going on in the conference. I do think, we should start with Dior Johnson news. Yesterday at a preliminary hearing, charges dismissed, a number of charges dismissed. I think there were 6 charges total. 4 were dismissed, but 2 were held over. 1 charge of simple assault, which is a misdemeanor, and then 1 charge of strangulation, which is a felony. Now, some of the felony charges were dropped. I think there was an aggravated assault charge. I think there was an intimidating a witness charge. I believe those are both felonies. And so it's, from Dior's perspective, that's a good thing. I don't want to sit here. I don't want to just sort of say blanket statement. Well, that's good that those felonies were dropped. Because it's not really my place to say what's good or what's bad, sort of in the broader scheme, the broader picture, the bigger picture, the broader scheme of things. I think in terms of Dior Johnson, in terms of Pitt basketball, the positive development is having felony charges dismissed. Ideally, because those felony charges don't really have a standing. I don't know if that's the case or not. Legal stuff is a tricky thing to talk about. And I want to be respectful of all the parties involved here. I want to be respectful of sort of everyone that's all the different pieces that are in play. But at the same time, I know we're looking at this from the perspective of Pitt basketball. I don't want to be callous about that. I don't want to be insensitive about that and just talk about what's it going to take to get Dior Johnson back on the basketball court. But the reality is, I think for most Pitt fans, while the question of what Dior Johnson did or didn't do is a relevant one, and you want to have high character players and people that you can root for and cheer for on your favorite teams, at the same time, the biggest question I think for most Pitt fans is, when's Dior Johnson going to be able to play basketball again? And again, I'm uncomfortable taking exclusively that perspective because you want to be respectful to the victim. You want to be respectful to everyone who's involved in this situation. But as it relates to Dior Johnson, as it relates to Pitt basketball, the thing that's keeping him off the team, the thing that's keeping him on indefinite suspension is felony charges. There is sort of a blanket policy kind of a no wiggle room policy that if you have felony charges, you are indefinitely suspended, period, point blank, and that's it. There's no sort of room for interpretation or context or situation or anything like that. And I'm not saying there's anything that could arise in this situation that would perhaps allow Dior Johnson to get back on the court. He's got felony charges, and he's got one remaining. Even if only 2 charges are held over, one of them is a felony charge, strangulation. That's certainly not a good look for him. And, it's obviously really bad if he did that. And it's still pretty bad if there's enough evidence to hold over that charge. And then in terms of basketball, that keeps him on indefinite suspension until all felony charges are resolved or dropped. And so that's where that stands with Dior Johnson. He's not back with the team. If all the felony charges had been dropped at the preliminary hearing yesterday, then Dior Johnson presumably could play in the exhibition game tomorrow, or at least be back practicing with the team. Even if he's not ready to get out on the court for a game, he could at least start working with the team and participating with the team again. Instead, this gets kicked down the road. I think his next hearing is scheduled for the first week of December from George Michalowski and Chris Carter and some of the other guys who were down at the courthouse yesterday reporting on it. And credit to those guys for bringing the news on that front. So we continue to wait on the Dior Johnson situation, and this Pitt basketball team moves forward with the players that they have. And I would say, as sort of a last thought on basketball before we get back into the football stuff, this is obviously a blow. It was a blow to lose Dior Johnson to indefinite suspension. It takes some of the shine off of this team for sure. But at the same time, there was excitement and optimism about this team before Dior Johnson committed. There was excitement born of Nellie Cummings deciding to transfer from Colgate. There was excitement born of John Hughley coming back for another season. Jamarius Burton returning. There was excitement about adding some guys who can legitimately shoot. Greg Elliott and Blake Hinson. And maybe sort of under the radar, maybe Nate Santos emerging as a shooter. There was excitement about adding the Diaz-Graham twins. There was excitement and optimism about this team. Maybe not saying they're going to win 20 games or make the NCAA tournament, but that it could conceivably be the best team Jeff Capel has had and be built in a way that other Jeff Capel teams have not been built. And all of that existed prior to Dior Johnson choosing to join the Panthers. But I don't think we've sort of recaptured that optimism or that enthusiasm in light of the Dior Johnson news of the indefinite suspension. And that's curious to me, or that's interesting to me. And I'm really curious to see how the team plays tomorrow in the exhibition game and how that impacts that enthusiasm or optimism. Maybe some of it is reignited if Nellie Cummings looks really good, if Hinson and Elliott and Santos knock down some shots, and if Hughley dominates the way he should in most non-conference games, in a good number of conference games, and certainly in an exhibition game against Clarion or somebody. So I think there's a lot to look forward to in that regard, at least from the exhibition game tomorrow, that maybe some of that enthusiasm can be built back up in light of the unfortunate Dior Johnson news. So we'll see what happens in that game. We'll certainly talk about it next week on Morning Pitt episodes and on the Panther-Lair show and all of those things. And then, of course, we'll keep an eye on the Dior Johnson stuff as well. As it relates to football, Pitt's going to Louisville tomorrow night. Panthers will take on the Cardinals. They last met each other in 2020. That game was at Heinz Field during the COVID season. Schedules got jumbled around, and Louisville got added to Pitt's schedule. Cardinals are 3-3 overall, 1-3 in the ACC right now. And they're favored by 2.5. Some of that might be due to Malik Cunningham looking like he's going to be back on the field after missing some time due to a concussion. Ultimately, they often say that home team gets the 3 points. The home team gets 3 points just for being the home team. If Louisville is minus 2.5 on the betting line, then you would think that means on a neutral field, Pitt would be favored by a half a point or so, which pretty much makes this game about a pick'em. We all know this game is going to come down to Pitt's offense. Obviously, the defense is going to have its challenges with containing Malik Cunningham. They're going to have to get into the backfield. They're going to have to pressure Cunningham. They're going to have to force him to make bad decisions when he throws. And when he decides to scramble, they need to contain him and take good angles and make plays in the open field, which they didn't do all that well against Jeff Sims at at Georgia Tech. Grant Wells at Virginia Tech broke a couple runs on them as well. But they really struggled with that against Jeff Sims at Georgia Tech, who made a couple big runs against Pitt in that game a few weeks ago. Obviously, the Panthers' lone ACC loss so far. They can't allow that to happen with Malik Cunningham. Whether it's the linebackers, the corners, they need to take better angles when they're trying to tackle him when he decides to scramble. And the defensive ends, if they get upfield and force pressure, they also have to be able to keep him in the pocket and contain him so he doesn't just break out and run. Ideally, you'd get to him quick enough and with a strong enough sort of containment that you can force him into rushed throws or uncomfortable throws and get a few turnovers, which those opportunities presented themselves in the Georgia Tech game and Pitt couldn't convert. They need to convert some of those. Eric Hallett, Tyler Wiltz. I feel like somebody else, Shane Simon, maybe had his hands on a ball in that Georgia Tech game. I mean, those passes need to be caught. Those passes need to be intercepted, and the turnovers need to be converted. And that will obviously help the cause with the offense. But it's still going to come back to the offense and what Pitt can do. I think if Pitt fans want to have optimism heading into the final 5 games of the season after tomorrow night, obviously a win is the first step, but they want to see marked improvement out of the offense. And while, some of that is going to be the running game, Louisville is currently 6th in the ACC in rush defense, so it might not be totally easy sledding, but this running game is working pretty well right now, so you think they'll get some yards there. It's ultimately going to come down to whether or not you can make plays in the passing game. And I've talked all week, if you've watched any of the Morning Pitt episodes, if you watched the Panther-Lair show on Wednesday night, I talked all week about this. Get the ball to Gavin Bartholomew. Get some of those medium range or even short distance passes just to get into a rhythm. I'm going to say this over and over and over again. And by God, if they actually do it tomorrow night, you probably will want to mute me on Twitter, because if they start peppering El Barto with targets and they start hitting Jared Wayne and Kanate Mumfield for 7 or 8 yards to chip away and get the offense into a rhythm, I am going to be insufferable on Twitter talking about it, particularly if it leads to an effective offense and ultimately a win. I am going to be insufferable about it. But it's still going to, they're still going to rely on the run. Pat Narduzzi said Thursday that Rodney Hammond is still kind of limping, and we'll see. They got to get him healthy. I expect him to play. I think he's going to be ready to play. I think he's going to be on the field a lot. I think they'll probably use Izzy Abanikanda and Rodney Hammond together a lot. I think they're going to try and go with a 1-2 punch and a two-headed monster and a double-edged sword and whatever kind of silly metaphor you want to use for it. I think they're going to try to get those guys both involved a lot and get them the ball a lot and make plays with those running backs a lot. And if they do, that should open up some of that passing game, which we've been talking about all season. It should open up the passing game. We'll see if it actually comes together this week. I don't think they need to throw for 450 yards. I think if they throw for 250, I think it'll be a pretty successful a successful day with the passing game, because I think they'll have the running game going and sort of they'll feed off of each other. But to me, it's just about rhythm. It's about picking up first down. It's moving the chains. Maybe occasionally finding an opportunity to take a shot and go downfield, but I don't think you can just dive into being a downfield passing offense. I think you need to be a rhythm offense. I think you need to be methodical, chip away, get into a rhythm with Keaton Slovis, get into a rhythm with Jared Wayne and Kanate Mumfield. Louisville currently leads the ACC in sacks, so if you need to do some extra protection things, look, you don't have that many receivers anyway. So if you want to go with 2 tight ends and a back, or 2 backs and a tight end and only 2 receivers, just so you can keep someone extra in the block, because of Louisville's pass rush, I think that's not a terrible idea. I think screens and quick passes like that can neutralize some of that pass rush and probably are the things this offense should be doing anyway. It's funny. You've got a good pass rush coming in. You've got an offense that hasn't really found its rhythm in the passing game yet. And so a good way to get into a rhythm is some quick hitter passes, some short stuff, some screens. And that just so conveniently happens to be a good way to neutralize an effective pass rush. Look, it's all coming together. Throw to the tight ends, throw the screens, slip screens to the running back, things like that. And then in addition to running the ball. And then once you get that stuff going, maybe you'll have some opportunities to work downfield, the Bub Means or even Kanate Mumfield or Jared Wayne. Those guys can make contested catches downfield. Wayne and Mumfield can. Means, that's what he's done in his career. It's what he did at Louisiana Tech. There should be opportunities for it. But I've said this all week. We'll see if they are thinking the same thing. I'm not sure if they will be thinking the same thing, but we'll see if they are come tomorrow night. Is there going to be a road game? It's going to be a challenging environment. It's also going to be an environment where if the offense goes 3 and out, they're not going to get booed. If the quarterback throws an incomplete pass, he's not going to get booed. I'm not going to say there's an advantage to being on the road in that regard, but it is a different kind of environment. And let's be honest, the Acrisure Stadium environment has not been kind to Keaton Slovis in the passing game and the offense as a whole in the last few games. And I'm not criticizing that. That's understandable. It's been frustrating to watch, for sure. But getting out of that environment, going on the road, just sort of an us against the world type of mentality, that might be a good thing for this offense and this team to sort of, circle the wagons, rally the troops, all those metaphors. It's a metaphor Friday around here on the Morning Pit. But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world to be on the road and have an opportunity to try and work out some of the kinks in the offense in this game. It's a winnable game, like all 6 of these are, but it's not going to be an easy winnable game. You're going to have to do what you do and execute well and play at a high level. And I think there are a few guys who could stand to step up. I think Konate Mumfield could be due for a big game. As a matter of fact, when you read the 3-2-1 column later today, that just might be my prediction, although Pat Narduzzi said yesterday that he's a game-time decision. We'll see. I expect him to play. He didn't play against Virginia Tech. I expect him to play against Louisville tomorrow night. But I think Konate Mumfield could be in line to step up. I think, defensively, the ends, Haba Baldonado and John Morgan and Deslin Alexander could be in position for a big game. I think there has been continued progression at the linebacker position, particularly if you start working Servassier Dennis outside a little bit, which Pat Narduzzi was particularly forthcoming about that possibility on Monday. I think there are a lot of guys that could potentially start trending in the right direction, whether it's the ends or the receivers or the quarterback. Tomorrow night is their opportunity to sort of start that and really tell the story of this season. That's what they're going to have an opportunity to do in these next 6 games. Of course, Pitt-Louisville is the nightcap in the ACC tomorrow night, the final game of the weekend in the conference. The conference actually got started last night. Now, we tape these morning pits, peek behind the curtain. We tape these morning pits a day ahead of time. So I don't know what happened in last night's Virginia-Georgia Tech game. I will say that it would be ideal for Pitt if Georgia Tech lost. You'd be rooting for Virginia to win on the road because that neutralizes the tiebreaker advantage Georgia Tech held over Pitt. Now, I don't think anybody's expecting Georgia Tech to win the division, but Georgia Tech had 1 loss heading into last night's game, and Pitt had 1 loss heading into this weekend. And at this point, Georgia Tech holds a tiebreaker. You want Georgia Tech to lose another game. And Virginia already with 3 losses entering last night's game, it would certainly, it wouldn't be the worst thing if they won and Georgia Tech lost. But we don't know what happened in that game. I'm guessing Georgia Tech ended up winning, but we'll, you guys know more than I do right now. We don't know about the games tomorrow, though. Syracuse at Clemson is the highlight of the ACC tomorrow. Syracuse going on the road against Clemson. Big opportunity for Syracuse to show it's for real. Clemson, a real opportunity to show that Syracuse is not for real. And there's no shame in losing to Clemson on the road. I mean, only rare, unique teams can truly win at Clemson. It's not something everyone is capable of doing. But Syracuse looking for that signature win. They beat NC State last week, but without NC State's starting quarterback Devin Leary. So we're looking for that. The Orange are still looking for that signature win, and certainly going to Clemson, a top 5 team that's undefeated and winning, would count as such. Now, if Clemson wins that game, they have all but tied up, all but sewn up the Atlantic Division. They would improve to 6-0 in the conference and virtually have no way they could. It would be almost impossible for Clemson not to clinch the Atlantic after that. Whereas Syracuse can keep itself in the hunt, obviously, with a win and climb into the top 10. But who knows how high they would climb? Already sitting at 6-0, if they were to go on the road and upset a top 5 team, they might jump from 14 up to the top 5. We'll see what kind of bump they would get out of that. I'm expecting Clemson to hold court and kind of show that Syracuse isn't quite there yet. 12:30 game, Duke at Miami. This is one where, Duke kind of on the ropes a little bit after losing to North Carolina, a game they thought they probably should have, or they probably think they should have won last week. But now they're 1-2 in the ACC. If they go down to Miami and lose, they're going to be pretty much out of it for the Coastal Division. I don't think 5-3 is going to win this division. If Miami loses and falls to 1-2 in the division, they're going to be closer and closer to, I think, just quitting altogether. Because, I know they have a new coach, but Miami's still Miami until they show they're not. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens there. There's another Atlantic Division team. Boston College is at Wake Forest in the 3:30 game. No real rooting interest there. And then Pitt at Louisville tomorrow night as the nightcap. North Carolina is off, and Virginia Tech is off. So those two teams with a break this weekend. If your rooting interests, as far as Pitt goes, I think you want Duke to beat Miami. Because you'll still have a chance to beat Duke head-to-head, and that puts Miami at 2 losses, which gives you a leg up on them, assuming you take care of business tomorrow night. Like I said last night, you wanted Virginia to beat Georgia Tech. We'll see if that actually did happen. And then Syracuse, Clemson, Boston College, Wake Forest. Not really sure you have any interest, or rooting interest in those games at all, other than to just general dislike of a team like Wake Forest. I don't know if there's much of a rooting interest as far as Pitt is concerned. But what it comes down to, all these things we talk about are sort of for naught if Pitt can't figure out the offense. If Pitt can't get the offense headed in the right direction, it doesn't matter what other teams do. And, step number 1 tomorrow night is to come out with a win. And if they come out with a win and the offense still doesn't look great, you're still a little concerned, but at least they got a win. If they come out with a win, and the offense looks really good and looks like it's taken some steps forward and does some new things and has some new wrinkles, well, then you feel really good about it. And obviously, if they come out with a loss, then, the Panther-Lair postgame show will be a lot of fun tomorrow night. Don't forget about that. We will be live after the game tomorrow night. I don't know what time it's going to start. I'm hoping around midnight, but that depends on how quick that game ends. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, you turn on notifications, you'll get an alert sent to your phone when we go live. So you don't have to worry about it. Oh, I missed it. What time were they starting? I don't even know. Your phone will buzz. It'll be like, hey, Panther-Lair's starting. Get your beer and get ready. And so we can take care of that for you. You don't have to worry about knowing what time we're going to start. We will send you. I just turned on the flashlight on my phone, trying to demonstrate that. We will send you you'll get a notification about it. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. That subscribe button is right down there, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video. That's a big help to us, of course. And then stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Panther-Lair.com. We'll have the game thread going tomorrow night throughout the game. So you're sitting at home, you're watching by yourself down in your basement or whatever it is. You open your laptop, you keep it open to the game thread, you post all your comments and complaints and rants and praise and whatever it is you have to say during the game. You post it right there in the game thread on the Panther-Lair.com message boards. Thanks so much for tuning in again today. Appreciate you watching the Morning Pit all week long. It's been a lot of fun. You can, of course, catch up on the videos right there at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com in case you missed any of them. And, thanks. I hope you had a great week. Hope you have a great rest of the Friday. Enjoy it. Enjoy all day tomorrow, Saturday. It's supposed to be a really nice day, so you can enjoy that and get ready for Pitt Louisville tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We'll be live after the game. Don't forget it right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then we'll be back Monday morning to start a new week with the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.